Hey, it's me again. So I went live a little bit earlier and discussing the difference between hemp seed oil and CBD oil. And I think this is such a crucial point that I really wanted to come back and revisit it and speak to it more eloquently with more detailed information. Um, the only quiet place in my house is not in my house. So here I am balanced on my trampoline talking. So I apologize if it gets a little bouncy. But I always just love it when people say that they default to the old, it's just snake oil remark, because they have clearly done zero research and they're just speaking off the cuff. And honestly, it makes them look a little uneducated, because CBD oil has been used for thousands of years with thousands of years of testimonies. We've recorded it in history in the Orient and France and India. I mean, it's been used forever. So, but we live in a world that must have proof, DNA proof, right? Killer didn't do it if we don't have DNA evidence, but we want proof of every single thing. And guess what? We have just as many scientific studies too, hundreds of them. So physicians that say there isn't proof have simply failed to do the research. And it makes me really sad when doctors say that, because it kind of makes me realize they're not really keeping up with current practices. But I'm going to break this into two videos in the interest of time. And this is going to be chock full of good details. I don't want anyone to skip it because it looks too long. So I'm going to try to talk really fast and keep it short. But today is just going to be kind of getting the background of what essential oils are and a bit of the history of essential oils. I might get excited and hop right into that second video after this, but we'll see. But first, I want to acknowledge the skeptics around essential oils. You hear that term all the time, essential oils, and it's kind of falling on deaf ears because it has been such a craze lately. And I was a skeptic, a big one. I'm trained in the medical model where you find the symptom and treat it. And as a therapist, I made recommendations to doctors for meds, for spasticity, for anxiety, for pain. My job was and is to advocate for my patients, and meds were a huge part of that. I mean, I needed to make their situation ideal so that they could progress with therapy. It wasn't until I was personally struggling to find relief with my own issues that I had gone through all the medicines, all kinds, every kind that was created for my autoimmune disease I took with little to no relief. And it wasn't until then that I found relief in homeopathic remedies, natural remedies. That includes diet. That includes changing foods that I add to my diet, foods that I avoid, and essential oils. So on a side note, do you know that my doctor at Mayo Clinic, which is the guru, told me that diet had nothing to do with inflammation, which at that point I just completely discounted him. Do you know why he said that? Because there were no scientific studies that have been performed to prove it. So who's going to do a scientific study on diet? I mean, there's no money to be made. So until he sees a scientific study to prove that diet affects your healing or your inflammation, he's not going to believe it. So it's a very frustrating experience, but he blew me off when I told him that I'd gotten out of excruciating amount of pain by going on this massive candida yeast diet. He wants DNA proof. And I have to say that my husband is a natural cynic, skeptic. He's the worst kind. And when he saw me and what changed in my body when I went on that massive diet, he couldn't believe it. So that is a testimonial. I was not a part of a scientific study, but we know without a doubt that that diet worked for me. So you've got to listen to testimonials and you've got to read scientific journals. You've got to weigh both of them. They both have value. You can't discount one because there's not enough of the other, or vice versa. But I call myself a petri dish for essential oils because I was taking a biologic that suppressed my entire immune system. Almost entirely. I had to sign my life away. I had to literally sign my life away and acknowledge that I was at risk to getting cancer, tuberculosis, pneumonia, all those things, because I would have no immune system. I cried. I didn't want to take this medicine, but I was in so much pain that I had to. This was really my only option. And this was a drug that was supposed to be helping me. Ironically, it kind of took from Peter to give to Paul, right? I didn't have any immune system, but it relieved a little bit of my symptoms. I wasn't healed, and it wasn't healing my body. It was only taking away some of my symptoms. But guess what? I got pneumonia twice. I had fluid on my lungs that needed to be removed by a risky procedure with an enormous needle called pleurocentesis, but I got out of that one. I did, with essential oils. I also had issues with my gums, cysts, viruses, yet my Crohn's kind of improved. It was then that I started looking outside the box, outside the medical model, to think, what if these things worked? I remember the day like it was yesterday that I cried all the way from Rochester, Minnesota, from Mayo Clinic to Houston on the plane. My poor husband had no idea. I mean, he was just as frustrated and hopeless as I was, because my doctors, the best experts, right? You go to Mayo Clinic, the best doctors in the world told me that most people with the severity of my disease came to his office in a wheelchair, and that if I was on the Oregon Trail, that he would bet on me getting to Oregon. Thanks. That's what I got. Basically, he said, you're a really sick girl, and these are the cards that you've been dealt, and sent me home. And we just thought going to Mayo Clinic, it was like the end all. They're going to heal me. They're going to find a solution for me. And he, not only did he discount our efforts in diet, but basically said there really was not much they could do for me. So my journey into natural remedies is still growing, even to this day. The light has switched on. My body is healing, and regardless of whether my body is a part of a scientific study or not, I went from 8 out of 10 discomfort daily to a 0 to 1 out of 10 and off of all pharmaceutical medication. Testimonials can be more powerful than a scientific study. Don't get me wrong, because I eat up scientific journals. I love reading them. I love the data. I love the research, but you cannot ignore the people, the patient, the voice of the person that is ailing. And I have had plenty of doctors, y'all, plenty of doctors preach to me, standing from their soapbox, looking down at me, who have never been in my shoes. The best doctors were the ones who listened with their ears, how I felt. And when whatever I told them made me, what I told them made me feel better, or what I told them made me feel worse, and they asked questions because it went against what the literature was saying, those are the doctors that were my best doctors and made the most impact on my broken body. So maybe what was happening to me didn't line up with their literature, and they wanted to know why. They asked more questions. They got down to business, and those doctors are still some of my favorite to this day. So appropriately speaking, right here, I want to insert that I am not a doctor. I am coming from a point of humility, but of experience. I'm a constant learner, and I'm simply sharing what I have learned, what I've studied, what is valuable to me, and what I have researched. I have so much to learn, but I want to share the basics because most people don't really care to go beyond the basics. They don't want to understand the why CBD works or the how. They just say, try it or don't try it. Snake oil, not for me. But the basics make sense, and the basics add to amazing science that really makes sense. So let's get to the meat really quick. Historically, regardless of your faith, I think we can all agree that the Bible is a great resource for telling us how people lived before Jesus walked on the earth and 4 years after. But basically, the Bible has hundreds of references to using essential oils. So before the scientific method was the golden rule, humankind used every part of the plant. The Bible refers to their seeds, their resin, their bark, their leaves, their oils for healing, aromatics, spirituality. The Apocrypha in the Old Testament, which is in the Catholic Bible, it was written between 300 BC and 100 AD. And there are other books written 200 BC to 600 AD that give us an idea as to how people lived on a daily basis in those days. This teaches us how plants were used. They did not have hospitals back then. People went to the church for healing. They went to get anointed with oils, which is amazing because that to me goes in one ear and out the other, right? I've read the Bible, I hear the scripture, and I always heard about anointing with oils, and I never asked what that meant. But what defines an essential oil? Essential oils are called essential because they're the necessary part of the plant. They're the lifeblood of the plant. They contain the essence or essential of the plant. So while we view them from a perspective of how they can keep us and how they can help us keep us healthy, the oils are vital to the life and the processes of the plant. So God created plants with as much intricacy, detailed design as he created humans and as he created animals. It's fascinating to me why I never liked to study plants, because now that I'm studying them, it's just like anatomy and physiology, which is my passion. Plants are so smart, they make their own food. What's photosynthesis? Have you ever stopped to think that plants do that for themselves? Nobody is making food for them. Plants live alone in the forest by themselves. Nobody, I mean, yes, we water house plants, or yes, we feed house plants, but out in the wild, out here, plants are doing that themselves. They have parts that are created in their makeup for protection. So imagine a cactus with needles for self-preservation. Think about succulents that are out in the desert, even a cactus, again, kind of stuck on succulents, but they're just full of water so they don't dehydrate, to prevent bugs from eating them. Think about herbs. We plant herbs around our patio in order to get the bugs away. Every plant is created intelligently, and it's truly remarkable to me the detail of plants, and those plants are smart. They're smart because God made them, but they're smart because they're made with carbon. So if you think about organic and inorganic molecules, organic means with carbon, inorganic means without carbon. So imagine that God placed Adam and Eve in this gorgeous Garden of Eden, and the Bible tells us he gave them everything they needed. So can you just imagine all the things that we can garner and use to help us, to build for us? I mean, not just healing, but you can use wood to build. I mean, everything is in the garden that we needed. That's so fascinating. So, okay, so to the science. Essential oils are tiny molecules, teeny weeny molecules, 500 AMU. AMU stands for atomic mass units, that can penetrate into every single cell in our body. That is why essential oils work so well, that they can get into every single cell, including passing the blood-brain barrier. There's so many quotes that I read that people will say, if we can only find something that'll pass the blood-brain barrier, we could solve Alzheimer's and all these neurological, Parkinson's, all these things. We do have something that passes the blood-brain barrier, and that's essential oils. It's fascinating. Even my son, who has ADD, the psychiatrist explained to me that there's a special kind of fish oil. Fish oil is really good for ADD and for focus, that you have to take like gobs of it if you just take straight fish oil. But if you take it with breast milk passes the blood-brain barrier. And so that's the way they get the fish oil into the brain for ADD kiddos and adults, because they know that passes the blood-brain barrier. So we know we have these essential oils that can pass the blood-brain barrier. It's fascinating. But if you compare an essential oil, compare that to fatty oils that we cook with, like olive oil, canola oil, their molecules are way too big. They are over 1,000 AMU. So we've got 500 AMU, teeny weeny, to twice the size, 1,000 AMU, atomic, mass units. So I think about it as like fat balls, if you've ever seen a fat cell. But if you see those cells, and if they're so big, they will just come up to another cell and just bounce off of it. But if you have these teeny weeny molecules, they'll get through. Oh, I know a good example. We're all talking about masks and what size particles can pass through a mask or not. Think about that. Essential oil molecules are so itty bitty that they could pass through a mask. They can pass through a mask, or through a cell. They can certainly pass through a mask. So using the Bible as a history book, essential oils were inhaled. You know that if you sniff things through your nose, it goes directly to the limbic system. It doesn't have to go through your brain or your spinal cord. Fascinating fact, if things are inhaled. That's why things bring back memories that are sniffed and smelled. They were also used topically and orally by everyone during Bible times. Topically and orally. Think about that. It doesn't matter where on your body the oil goes. If it's an essential oil, it will get through all the cells in your body. It'll spread throughout. Their benefits are referenced physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, throughout the Bible, and even other resources from the day. I use the Bible because it's very common and it can be used as a history book. But current day medicines are manufactured by man. They lack the carbon, as I said before. They're inorganic. They don't have the life force that a plant has, and therefore they don't have the intelligence of plants. They can't make themselves, they can't feed themselves, they can't do what a plant does. So every medication that is made by man has a side effect. Example, we know antibiotics are good, but antibiotics come into the body and we know we have to take probiotics after it because they wipe out the good and the bad. Essential oils are smart. They know how to go in, heal what needs to be healed, and leave alone what doesn't need to be healed. So we know that every medication has a side effect. Think about all the commercials that we watched on TV, and it speeds up to like 10 times, and it says all the potential side effects if you take this medicine, including an itchy toe or death. I mean, everything is listed on there. I work in a skilled nursing environment, and every day I see these sweet patients as their nurse piles pills in their hands, and they look at me and they say, I have no idea what these are for. Well, I ask and I find out that they really only need 2 of those pills for maybe high blood pressure and anxiety, but then they take a medicine for the side effects of the blood pressure, and then there's a side effect to the side effect pill, and then all of a sudden they're taking 15 pills and they have no idea what they're for. And most of them are to offset uncomfortable side effects. So many side effects. This is why we have to have doctors. We have doctors for many reasons, but medicine can be dangerous. We need chemists. We need people who know that are skilled in chemistry, that with a large knowledge to supervise the use of our medication so we don't kill ourselves on medication. And we've learned this. We've learned this with the opioid use. Medicines are not made to heal. Think about that. They are not made to heal. They are only made to find a symptom and cover or mask that symptom. Opiates are the perfect example. Yes, it's a pain medicine. Yes, it covers pain, but is it healing it? No. I got into that cycle. I was on a mild opiate and I was needing more and more and more. And I knew what was coming. I've seen it with my patients. I knew it was coming, and I wanted to get off those opiates because the more I took, the more I needed, yet I would come off and I was still in more pain. I have the same situation with my thyroid because I take thyroid medicine. Nothing's healing my thyroid. I'm going to be taking thyroid medicine for the rest of my life. Think about your meds, and are they made for you to be on them forever in order to keep that cycle going, or are they made to be healing you? So I also need to insert the claim that antibiotics saved my life. I am eternally grateful to, Alexander Fleming who invented penicillin, the very first antibiotic. I was on 10 IV antibiotics at the same time when I was septic. So I am not here to dog Western medicine. I totally believe in medicine. Saved my life. And I wanted saving. But on the flip side, I also believe that the overuse of long-term drugs, antibiotics, contributed to that of my health issues. I know it did. Starting when I was a junior in high school. So there's that. We can talk about that another time. That's a whole nother discussion. But when essential oils are used together, they don't cause side effects. They work in harmony. They don't work against each other. Just like we say that CBD and THC work together for that massive explosion, that entourage effect. They work together. They don't cause harmful drug interactions like synthetic drugs. We don't have to have the supervision of a doctor to use them. I always go back to Native Americans. I have always been fascinated by Native Americans and how they knew their plants for healing. I'm from Oklahoma, so this was always around. I was always fascinated with how they knew their plants for this or their plants for that. I'm like, how do they know all that? But when using essential oils, you don't get addicted or stuck using oils for life because they embody a healing power. You know how to heal what needs to be healed. Essential oils were everything in this world for much longer than pharmaceuticals ever have. Their use has been referenced in Arabia, Lebanon, Persia, Babylon, Southeastern Europe, Egypt, Libya, Africa, India, Himalayas, Indonesia, China. Y'all, everywhere used essential oils, and they knew something was working or else they wouldn't be using them everywhere. But this book that I'm reading, have I said this yet? My favorite book, The Healing Oils of the Bible. I read this over and over. So many resources, scientific resources as well. But it makes reference to 1,035 essential oils and 33 species of herbs and trees. So as a history book, we know that essential oils were used in abundance. And one of my favorite verses, which is on my website, is Ezekiel 47:12 says, "Their fruit will be used for food and their leaves will be used for healing," when speaking of plants. So plants are not only to be used for nutrition, for eating, but they're also used for healing. The Bible references plant oils such as olive, almond, and flaxseed being used for fuels, for aromatic essential oils, for flavor, for perfumes, incense, embalming. They were also referenced for emotional release, mental clearing, spiritual upliftment, physical healing, and the prevention of disease. There's so many uses. It was just such a common thing to use, and somehow we've just forgotten all that and wiped it clean. And I'm really excited about the world that's coming back into that, and I'm learning, and I'm so grateful that I'm learning about the use of oils. But the word anoint shows up in the Bible a lot, and it means to massage or rub with oil. So healing oils referenced in the Bible, they've referenced aloe, cassia, cypress, galbanum, frankincense, myrrh, spikenard, cedarwood. There's lots of them. Now that when I read them in the Bible, I get really excited. But the birth of the scientific method started between 500 to 600 years ago, and people began to look for answers to life outside of the church. For hundreds of years, people went to the church to get anointed and to get healed. Like I said before, we didn't have hospitals back then, but healing came from the church. So when the scientific method came about, culture became more secular, and we began to ease away from the church for our dependence on health and healing, putting less faith in God-made solutions and more dependence in man-made solutions. That's a little bit scary, I think. So I think this is a good place to pause. Just an intro to what essential oils are, why they are essential, what their role is in the plant and the human healing, and how plants are truly intelligent. To tie that into my passion for CBD, the hemp plant was created by God with specific purpose in mind. This is part of a video I made when I very first started learning about CBD, and I'm going to read it to you. But cannabidiol, which is what CBD stands for, is one of more than 100 unique cannabinoid compounds that are found in the oily resin. Remember we said how they talked about the resins in the Bible of the cannabis plant. The gooey resin is concentrated in the clusters of the cannabis flowers, which are covered by tiny trichomes. Trichomes are specialized structures that contain many oily medicinal compounds, including CBD, THC, and various other terpenes. Remember, we've talked about cannabinoids, flavonoids, and terpenes, all coming together. The mushroom-shaped trichomes protect the plant from heat. They protect the plant from ultraviolet radiation. The oil also has an antifungal, antibacterial, insecticidal properties that deter predators. The stickiness of the resin provides another defensive layer by trapping bugs. So the same oily resin that protects the health of the plant includes components that are completely beneficial for human health, all found in CBD oil. Isn't that fascinating? God gave us plants, and they have certain things that make them up that protect them from bugs or from pests or from ultraviolet light, but then we can use what's in those plants for the exact same purposes for ourselves. Is that not amazing? Are y'all not on the edge of your seats? So there you have it. Plants have an incredibly intricate design to protect them in the wild, but that same design benefits us, and it benefits the human body and protects us. And why is that? Because they are intelligent. They are incredibly supernaturally made by God for purposes of healing and nutrition. I just find it so fascinating how everything on this earth is orchestrated for what seems to be a simple purpose, yet at the same time it is a much greater purpose. We think plants are just growing, but yet it can serve a huge purpose in our healing and keeping us healthy or preventing illness. The fact that I have never thought about the tiny details of a plant, as much as I love science and anatomy and physiology, like I said, it is the same thing, the anatomy and physiology of the plant. It just blows my mind. They each serve a God-given purpose. So that's where I'm going to cut because I don't want it to get too long. So come back soon. Next one, we will address how and why the oils heal, and truly that will get us to the point where you get a detailed answer as to why hemp seed oil is not the same thing as CBD oil. All right, have a good one.